Thank
those
heavens.
minutes.
So if I leave, there's no.
Um,
Get out of here.
Please, will someone Velcro Commissioner Lang to the chair? Uh, Welcome, everyone, to June 24th edition of the Planning Commission. Let's call this meeting to order, and with an emphasis on order to our less ruly people who are already working on achieving escape velocity. With us today in person are Commissioner Lang, Vice Chair O'Mara, myself, Chair Routh, Commissioner Alexander, and Commissioner Ames, and online, our fearless leader, Director Diefendorfer. I would love to start with business. We have a code alignment project letter that would love a thumbs up or a thumbs down if that is what is needed. But I'm seeing enough thumbs up. Okay, great. And that, so we're good to go. Let that fly. Items of interest from commissioners. Okay. Going straight along, Sandra Wood, the director's report. Is it
I
you?
have the director's report.
Take it away.
Good evening, commissioners and Patricia. Nice to see you online. Thanks for joining us. I'm sitting in Patricia's chair, the director's chair. My name is Sandra Wood, Bureau of Planning and Sustainability, she, her pronouns, principal planner. We don't have a very long director's report today. This is, of course, the last meeting of this sitting commission, so I just wanted to recognize that. We are going to the Climate Resilience and Land Use Committee meeting of the City Council on Thursday morning for the appointments of our new commissioners for the new year, the new fiscal year. So happy fiscal year, new fiscal year, everyone. So that's on Thursday morning. And on that subject, we have two of our suggested or recommended, mayor recommended appointees in the audience today. So I'll have them wave to the commission, and their report and their names have been published on the commission, on the council agenda. And that was sent to the commission. And we hope to get the committee's recommendation on Thursday to go to the full council on July 16th. And the full meeting of the new commission will be on July 22nd is what we're aiming for. And that is all I have for the director's report.
Awesome. Question, comments? Okay. I will also share, going back to items of interest, I'm sorry, tomorrow evening, I have the honor of being the liaison to the Transportation System Plan Community Advisory Committee, and that is kicking off with 32 members tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. So, because as a body, we have liaisons to some different committees that include, for example, the DRAC, which Commissioner Spivak is on. So items of interest are an opportunity to share updates from those committees to Commissioner Lang. Oh, I thought you were issuing as if to speak. You were scratching your ear. Okay, I regret the error. We're playing it a little fast and loose this evening because our main, could we have our one act of business, formal business this evening is the consent agenda, the consideration of the June 10th minutes. Would anyone like to motion to approve?
I would move to approve.
Commissioner Lang,
I second.
Commissioner Alexander. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. And with that, we are on to our main order of business, which is to weep uncontrollably at the loss of our wonderful colleagues and the Planning Commission's 2 years in review. Curious.
Okay. Yeah. Hi. Hello. Good evening.
Patricia Diefendorfer for the record. Sorry for the hoarse voice. Just keeps getting hoarse, more and more hoarse for some reason. But I'm glad to see you all. I'm sorry that I'm not there with you in person. I did really want to take the opportunity to do this 2-year review with you, just for us to reflect briefly on the 2 years of this commission. And I'm really pleased that I could be with you to kind of do that reflection. I'm sorry that I'm not there in person, but I'm going to go ahead. We have a very short PowerPoint. I'll go ahead and run through that, and then I'd love to leave some time for our commissioners to give some reflections. So I will go ahead and try to share a screen here. 1 second. Sorry about that. 1 moment. Oh, all right. Almost there. Sorry about that. Okay, here we go. Can you see that in full screen now?
Yes.
Yes. All right. Great. Thank you for your patience. Sorry about that. All right. Well, here we are. As we said, we just wanted to take a moment to reflect on this.
Back in the day.
Patricia, are you speaking? We can't hear you.
To superimpose me.
Yes. That about does it.
That's it. That's where they are. Yeah.
Let's give her a minute.
Yeah, we're going to hang out while we wait for Director Diefendorfer to rejoin us at the whims of technology. In the interim, we have pizza, if anyone would like some. Including if you're online, you have perhaps time to come, and there's pizza for you too.
Her internet just went out. Let me see. I will pull up the presentation. You have it? Let me see. Oh, that's too bad. Yes, go for it, she said. Where is it? Where do we have it? Thank you. Okay, we're almost there. What? I'm in here. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to be presenting the 2 years in review. And I have been with you for 2 years. So as you remember, 2 years ago, we created, out of the Planning and Sustainability Commission, we created the new Planning Commission. And while it's a new commission, of course, the Planning Commission has been here since 1918. And I always like to remind people of that because it is a longstanding commission in the city. And there are many committees and commissions, but I think we're probably the longest standing, or you are all the longest standing. So we went ahead and just wanted to take a moment to reflect on the last 2 years. We can go to the next one. And first there were 8, and then Brian joined, right, on the commission. We wanted to celebrate and achieve some of the accomplishments of the commission, reflect on the importance of the work, and how this commission has served the city and its communities throughout the last 2 years. Thank you for being a good sport, for being on the added picture. So by the numbers, between March of 2023 and June of 2025, the commission's held 38 public meetings. And that means that you all have devoted about 1,200 hours of volunteer hours in meetings. I know you all spend a lot of time also reading the materials ahead of time and reading testimony and thinking. I think you're probably going on walks, thinking about the proposals and having discussions with each other. So a lot of volunteer hours. Amongst those are 27 briefings that were held, 20 public hearings, and reading testimony from over 450 testifiers over the course of the years. And you sent 21 recommendations to the City Council, which is, of course, one of your first highest goals and priorities. We took a look at the types of projects that you reviewed over the last 2 years and categorized them into these categories. They really fell nicely between housing, area planning, responsive code changes, and of course there were the TIF districts. So for housing, there was the Land Division Code update, which was a big chunk of work. The housing needs analysis, which of course sets the framework for the next, 20 years until 2045 for how many housing units we project to need and what income brackets we need to provide housing. You took a look at the middle housing report in the single dwelling zones, and that was a monitoring report to see how well the residential info project has performed over the years. We've also done smaller projects like the housing regulatory relief project that provided some relief for new housing projects that are being built. Next one, please. Area planning. The Lower Southeast Rising Area Plan, that was an entirely map plan. There wasn't any code changes with that one, but had quite a bit of conversations about employment zones in the area, creating a new center, which we didn't expect to go in when we went into that project. We didn't expect to have a new center added to the urban design framework plan and to upzone the area, but now the area is well poised to accept more housing and for more housing to be built. The 82nd Avenue Transit Project, of course, that was the locally preferred alternative for the transit project and the land use changes along 82nd Avenue. And Montgomery Park, which is probably one of our bigger area plans since the comp plan's been adopted after the Central City. I guess we did West Portland Park before that too, but Montgomery Park with the streetcar alignment and extension. Other projects for this category include the Gresham Urban Services boundary that you all just had a discussion about. And we would have lumped probably street vacations into this category too. And we just wanted to make a mention of the street vacations because those take some thought, and this body provides a vehicle for people to be able to testify on those. The responsive code changes, and I say responsive because these have been that's what we've been doing for the last, I think, 2 years, is responding to the state of affairs and our current economy and the economic downturn and certainly the development downturn. In this category, we have the parking compliance amendments where we eliminated all parking requirements in the city. The odor code that clarified what the standards were and our compliance regulations around that. The Rose Quarter sign amendments, which is allowing changes for the MODA signs. Recap 10, which is the Regulatory Improvement Code Amendment package, which included a lot of changes to increase housing production, economic development, and reducing regulations. You had some tree code amendments in there. Remember the large tree standards. And then the most recent, the Code Alignment Project, which is also suspending rules for some of the titles for a variety of projects. The TIF districts, East Portland and the Central City TIF districts, I believe there were 4 and 4 in each one of them. So those were large conversations, and you took some testimony about that. And then finally, we wanted to recognize the work the commission did for adopting new bylaws for the commission. And we also did the best practices document, which we all worked on together, and provided a space and forum for the community to engage in land use. So thank you for your work on that. We had, this is a slide that shows the adjectives you all would use to describe the Planning Commission today. This was a year and a half ago. And the adjectives you all put on the board to describe your ideal Planning Commission. I'll let you just take a look at that for a second, because I'm hoping I'm hoping you can recognize that, and I'm hoping you've achieved what you think is the ideal Planning Commission. So with that, we wanted to recognize, of course, our 3 commissioners who will be leaving. Michael Pouncil, who is not here today, Michael Alexander, and Wade Lang. Thank you very, very much for your service for the last 2 years. We have much gratitude for each of you. I have letters from the mayor here thanking you all for your service. So I'll be distributing that right after this. And finally, we also have somebody else to be grateful for, and that is Julie Oken, who is shyly sitting in the back. Julie has been with the Planning and Sustainability Commission and with this commission for 15 years. I went through our planning. I went through our records and I wrote down all the names. So Julie, you and I can go through them. It's 34 commissioners she has supported. That's 360 meetings. Pages and pages of meeting minutes, thousands of testifiers. I counted, and it was a gazillion emails that you have sent, and we estimate about 300 orders of hummus that you've put in. So thank you, Julie, very much for your service. And this is kind of marks the end of Julie's service with the commission too. So we wanted to thank her. And Patricia, are you back on?
Yes, I am so sorry. I'm sorry, I got so flustered. My internet in this 1811 house that we're staying in went out, so I apologize for that. But I just thank you so much for just jumping in there, Sandra. I'm so sorry. The internet has been stable except for the moment that I was supposed to be speaking to you all. So I apologize, but I just wanted to chime in to also say, to thank you all so much, to our outgoing commissioners, and to really thank you as a group, because I think that you really have shown what it is to be a collaborative body as a new commission, a reconstituted planning commission. You all were really kind of model collaborators, and the work that we did together, as Sandra said, working together to define the role of the commission, the advisory role, and the public comment for unadvised advising topics were all things that I think that we developed together, trying to think about the best, the way that the commission can operate in kind of its best form. And we hope to continue to do that with the new commission. So I don't want to take up too much time. I just wanted to really express my gratitude to you all as a group and to our outgoing commissioners, who each of you really brought your own particular lens and perspective, and added a lot of value to the commission and its deliberations. We really want you to know how much we appreciated that. So with that, I will conclude, and I will turn it back to you, Chair Ralph. Thank you for giving me a chance to say a few words, and apologies again for dropping out there for a minute.
Congratulations for getting technology to 18 and 11 house. So
Yeah.
way to go. I'd love anyone to share who is not leaving. I'd love to start with appreciation and remembrance and thanks of Commissioners Lang, Alexander, and Pouncil, and Julie. Anyone who would like to share, and that includes staff.
I will start. Vice Chair O'Mara, for the record. I had such a great time serving as chair for 2 years, and now I breathe a sigh of relief that I'm not doing that. But I do want to reflect on having had that position right after joining the Planning Commission. I really pulled and tried to harness the collective wisdom of the commission in moments of uncertainty, and want to call out Commissioner Alexander. You brought a lot of assurance when we had long lists of testifiers. I remember there was one night where you're like, oh, just, your experience at the port, you're like, we've got this. I've seen this, and this is good. And so just that, you bringing that specific bit of wisdom, and many others really, really helped. So thank you. Commissioner Lang, you were always complimentary after the meetings, and I was sometimes surprised, like, really? I did hold it together? But you never neglected to recognize and, just really wanted to appreciate that. And then Commissioner Pouncil, our former vice chair, brought such a creativity and inquisitiveness to the questions and the perspective around environmentalism and what he really holds close. And so I would just also say appreciation for him bringing that perspective, and sort of rounding out the commission with that unique experience. So, and then finally, Julie, of course, so much appreciation for you. And I'm looking around the chair to say hello. And thank you for onboarding Autumn as well, but really, really have also looked to you for a lot of guidance and all of your detailed notes that you provided, and little pieces of advice. Thank you so much, and I know we'll be seeing you around. Yeah, thank you.
Commissioner Ames, for the record, as the newest member of the council, it can be intimidating. I mean, I think regardless of your professional or education background, there's always, I mean, you're talking about the odor code, you're talking about large trees. I mean, it's just such a varying work statement. And I think that specifically about the outgoing members, what I really appreciated is how prepared they were for the meetings that really set the tone that, hey, you can learn this stuff. You just got to read it ahead of time. And that really showed with the thoughtful questions, and kind of, sort of bootstrap mastery of some of this stuff that you get thrown at you, that you really you can't have a lot of experience in all of it. And so that's one thing that I really respect and thank both of you, as well as Commissioner Pouncil. And then Julie, I mean, again, as a new person, it's intimidating, and having somebody that makes you feel welcome was much appreciated. So thank you.
I'll add, I think, start with Julie. It's easy when someone is so competent that it can suggest that the job is easy, when the job hurting all of us cats and also hurting through the process is anything but. And I'm so glad. I hope that we will have opportunities, and I trust that we will have opportunities to collaborate in your new role. And I'm sorry in advance of when that happens. Thank you in advance for your patience and grace. Yeah. I have to find where your route is. It's like, oh, I just happened by. So just thank you. And also, just more broadly, we are seeing in our society, I think that an attack on the importance and the sacrifice of public service on all levels of government, and I think it's just so important to remember how critical people who choose city and government as a public service is to the sense of belonging and functioning of the government that so many of our community members rely on. And I'm just really grateful to all the staff that have come forward as well through these briefings, and we see in officers' meetings as well, like how much behind the scenes work goes into just presenting in a way that is translatable and understandable to the diversity of folks on this body and anyone who chooses to chime in. So, and I think we've seen so many different aspects. Sorry, I'm going to talk for a long time, but we have an hour. Lucas is used to me talking at length in front of a group. So, and being able to make something that is complex and below the fold understandable to people is a really difficult task, and staff throughout this city make that happen. And we get to be we get the front row seats of what that looks like for land use and zoning, which is perhaps one of the weirdest parts of what we do as city government, right? So that I'll go to Commissioner Pouncil, who is not here, so he cannot blush. I so deeply agree with the breadth of experience that he brings, and the heart, and the fact that he, Commissioner Pouncil, has anyone who has ever been to Green Anchors with him understands just how large his capacity for innovation and creativity are, and that we were able to have him on this body for 2 years is just absolutely incredible. And some of the, particularly I think of the Montgomery Park Action Plan, having both Commissioners Pouncil and Commissioner Ames on this to have different perspectives literally at this table helped make what to me at least was a really difficult tense conversation knowable and appreciable and personal. So and Commissioner Alexander, I fangirled on you for a really long time before you joined the commission, and it took a while to calm down when you joined because I was so excited because of your work, having brought in, public health, that, you serve on the Port of Portland, that you have been so integral to the development of the Albina Vision Trust. So, other dragon boating, other aspects of your life that are woven in, and that you say so much with so few words, which is something obviously I aspire to and never actualize. And Commissioner Lang, great to have another East Portlander. It's rare, even though you graduated from the wrong school, which was David Douglas. As opposed to the right one, which is Park Rose. It's just been wonderful to get your experience through, development of the Lloyd District, through developing of so many different aspects of our city, and to really, it is rare to be on a body like this and to have more than one person who lives in East Portland, and that has been. I have felt less alone during these deliberations, in part because of that. So I will also say that you are not completely off the hook, because once you are on this body and you don't get to completely be off, we know where you are, and we know how to contact you generally, and I hope you will feel comfortable doing so. Answering the call. Please and thank you. For example, we've had, and that's a tradition that we've had before, people who have cycled off. We've had, for example, Daisy Quinones and Andres Oswil and Jesse Gittemeyer, who were our former youth commissioners, were really important voices as we were developing the bylaws and we were developing the youth commissioner position that we will see filled in the next month, which is very exciting. So that's, you never get to fully leave. So thank you for joining what you didn't know was a lifelong appointment to the Society of Planning Commissioners. But yeah, any others from staff or non-leaving before I ask a question of those who are departing? Okay, can I ask any remembrance or highlights that you have and advice that you would have for folks who are joining?
So we got Mike Alexander for the records. Patricia, see, I finally got it.
You did it. Awesome.
Thank you. So I'm assuming we're going in alphabetical order, not age.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. A couple of things. I don't know that there's a moment. I think the moment that I think commanded my attention was our first gathering together as a commissioner. And I looked at the profile of the composition of the commission and felt in many ways, like an imposter. There's the areas of expertise that this body brings to this work are impressive. And they remind me, and I hate to use a bad sports analogy, but 30, 40 years ago, football teams decided to bring in a soccer kicker. So they brought in somebody from outside of the science of that game who they felt could be a contributor in the way in which the game had been constructed. But what they brought came from another space. It came from a different set of experiences. And I've always felt like Carl Uprinian. I mean, for anybody who's been around long enough, one of the first kind of field goal kickers, because they were able to find a way to embed themselves in the game in a way that was valuable and contributed, but allowed them to be who they were in the way that they were. And I've always felt that within this body. I can't tell you how impressed I've been with not only the composition of commission, but the city staff who we work with, because the issues that we engage sometimes are so visible and they command such high passions that we feel like first responders. I mean, we're running into space, we're running into issues that people have tried to find a way to either blind themselves to or marginalize in ways that don't allow them to serve this city and this region in the way that we aspire. I tremendously appreciated to be a part of the space and to be in the room when those discussions were held, because they're designed to build bridges, not burn them, even if they're muddy and even if they're challenging. And I've always said that one of the things that I want to make sure is that at the end of this, I can go outside and honestly say that I see ways in which this impacts people who don't know what we're talking about, who don't understand it, for whom it's another language and a foreign one at that, but it has a direct bearing on the quality of their life and the future that they can have for their children and their community. So I'm using the rest of your hour, I think, but I have to say that this has been a tremendously enriching experience. And I have to tell you, it started as a big question mark. I have a daughter who's an attorney in DC, and she said, "What's this new commission?" I said, "It's the Planning Commission." She said, "No, seriously, what's the new commission?" And I said, "Sweetie, it's land use, it's zoning codes, it's trees." And she said, "Do they know?" And I said, "No, but by the time they figure out, it's going to be too late." So with that, I thank you. I am eternally grateful, humbled, and will be your biggest fan and supporter in the work of this commission going forward.
Wade Lang for the record. And since it's for the record, Patricia, boy, you were handed a load of novices right out of the chute, and to frame every meeting for us and to guide us through it was yeoman's work. Thank you for that. That made our work so much easier. And Sandra, I remember, I think it was one of our first meetings when we were being trained as new commissioners, and you brought in, I think, the 2035 plan and the zoning codes, and it's like, oh crap. I joined the wrong group. But it worked out, and the time you all took to educate us was critically important. And Julie, the patience you had with me and Portland City email, thank you so much. I never would have made it without that, and it was really helpful. And Autumn, thank you for carrying on that tradition. I appreciate it. I didn't leave a forwarding address, so you're not going to be able to get a hold of me. You don't know where I live. I actually left Portland just a few weeks ago, moved to Salem. And so it's opportune that my departure from Portland coincides with the departure from this commission. I had a lot of pride in serving on this. I recognize the importance of it, and so much importance because the decisions that we made or we helped to make or we encouraged to make truly has impacts beyond our circle and beyond our generation. There's things that we're deciding that will stand for a long time. And there's pride in that, and there's pride in the city that we all support and are working so hard to continue that support. And so that's my takeaway. But beyond that, and more important to me, is I feel I've increased a circle of friends here, and I have people that I can reach out to and I can talk to and I can learn from. I have been overwhelmed by the knowledge of the people that sit here, every time they ask a question, I'm thinking, damn, I wish I would have asked that question. So insightful. And it's just been a joy working with everybody on that level. I just, it's an experience that I will not forget. And with any luck, Portland will forget me and we will move on. But so thank you, the staff definitely, but fellow commissioners, it has been a real joy. And I appreciate everyone's efforts. So thank you.
I want to hear your advice. Do you have advice for our oncoming and our continuing members?
I'm not sure if it's advice, but I do think there has to be a recognition that the lenses each of us bring are rooted in a broad base of experience. And I'm a believer in starting stories in the beginning, not the middle. I mean, there are times when, past experience can sort of have you start at the point of, how do I fix this, as opposed to how do I explain it? And for me, that would be very helpful. I mean, because so much of this were things that I was sort of hearing for the first time that had been cycled several times in the course of people's work as developers or as planners or their day job leading in or, areas of alignment that sort of allowed them to sort of take it to another level. And to Commissioner Lang, I mean, the pointed focus around many of the questions were really based in a deep knowledge base and understanding. And I think there's an opportunity to sort of educate and bring people along. So I would just say if there's a little bit of framing around that, it would be helpful. Because, it's sort of like somebody saying, what you're looking for is in the Smithsonian, but they don't tell you what floor. They don't tell you. I mean, it's in there. It's like, wait a minute, a little direction, which elevator and what floor do I turn right or left would be helpful. Okay.
Wade Lang for the record. I remember Chris Smith used to sit on the commission, and he came to testify. And you remember this. He talked about a decision made that he regretted, and that impacted us in East County with the building of basically a large warehouse transit center out at the OK Mart on 122nd. And it was through some decisions made by the Planning Commission that came about to some degree. And he regretted that decision and told us so when he testified. And it just gets back to the impacts of decisions made have consequences, and they carry on for a long, long time. And I tried to think about that with everything that you handed us. What is it now? But what is it 25 years from now? What does that do? And it's a hard process to think through because who knows what 25 years brings, but it's worth the effort to do. And the other thing I would say is the testimony we got, written and in person, was so important to me to listen to what the community that was being impacted thought about what we were doing. What they had to say was, I think, vital to the decision-making process for us. And the time they were willing to take to get in front of us was impactful. And I think really helped me form my decisions around what we did. So those are my two little pieces.
I have more questions. I'm also curious, because we rarely have kind of unstructured time to talk about the functioning of this bureau and the functioning of this commission in this space. But I'm curious if anyone else has a question they would like to put to anyone here. And I'll say I've been a professional fundraiser, so silence is fine for me. Okay, well then I'm going to ask another question, if this is okay, if we're good. Okay, great. I think a number of us have nibbled around the edge of this question, and I think Commissioner Ames' statement of this is kind of a laboratory is one that we are learning alongside of each other. How have you learned? Like what helped you learn? What helped you learn the subject matter? What helped you learn your own thoughts? How have you come to? Because we are learning in real time a lot of this time, and no one, we've had as Sandra, thank you for and Patricia for sharing that presentation. Like we've had such a breadth of projects come before us. They've played to different strengths and have offered challenges of how we can in real time build an understanding to a sufficiency that we can make an informed decision that does have longstanding impacts, as you're saying. Also, David Douglas is a wonderful school. You're welcome. And this can be for anyone.
Well, I would just, it was really helpful when you provided the 2035 plan in the notebook form. That is something, now I didn't read it all, but I looked at all the pictures but that was something I constantly went back to as we started on a process of looking at something. It's just kind of go back to that again and kind of use that as my initial guide for learning. And then I would reach out to people that I knew and talk to them about what their thoughts were on it. And that kind of helped me down the road in educating myself. But then just the conversation had at this panel was incredibly useful. That tied with the testimony was all part of that final process of coming to a conclusion or a decision. So all of that stuff was helpful. And I will be reading the 2035 plan for another 10 years, I'm sure, just because it's so fun.
Yeah, I would offer maybe a two-sided coin when you say, what have you learned? The nature of the work here required that I really had to listen deeply. It wasn't, I wasn't sort of just skimming over the treetops. I mean, I had to dig in. And what helped, quite frankly, was public testimony. Because even as I got the presentations and the exquisite work that was done by city staff and team and everyone who brought this information to us, it's at the point of engagement that I began to understand. The greatest insights are at the place where there's the greatest impact or pain. I mean, that's where the learning takes place. And the combination of those two were just very enriching for me. But it had to start with, really listening deeply and sometimes having to read things, a paragraph 2 or 3 times to get it. Yeah, I mean, it's not intuitive. For me, it wasn't intuitive. That's what happens when you bring a social worker into a technical environment like this. But when we had people who were willing to take the time to talk out loud about what this meant going forward or not going forward, to me, it just deepened my understanding. And I felt much more comfortable about when I weighed in and how I weighed in, and sometimes if I weighed in, because all of those were options.
Vice Chair O'Meara, for the record, I I see one of my obligations as a planning commissioner to be challenged. And what I mean by that is I have my own set of assumptions and experiences that I bring to this role, but I want to hear what challenges me. And that's my spark, right? That's like, okay, testimony, so important, because when I hear or read something that I don't immediately understand or agree with, that's when I need to lean in. And that's the learning opportunity. And similarly, with most of the projects, especially the I would say more public interest projects that have come before us, I have likewise tried to seek out the information that's not readily available to me so that I can understand what other perspectives are out there and not part of my day-to-day experience. So that's really been important to me is leaning into those moments of, oh, I don't know if I agree with it. Why don't I agree with it? Or why don't I have that experience? That's when I need to push myself and really make that a learning moment.
I love how many different aspects of how we get information people are weaving in. And I think also, I think of when I look through and I read through the map app, the testimony that it's like, is there anyone, who is not in this room? Like, there's always that question of like, who might not have felt welcome, or that we haven't heard from them, that who might have a perspective that could be useful to this project that isn't otherwise in existence. And it's always fun to then reach out to someone and say, hey, have you heard about this weird commission? It's called the Planning Commission. It's been around since 1918, which is a thing that I learned today. And here's this project. Have you heard about it? And it's a wonderful opportunity. And I think that this is something that it has been a joy as a commissioner to be kind of that conduit of being able to use a project that's coming in to be able to actively ask community members that may not have been, who may not have known that this project was coming, that this was a place where their expertise was needed and hoped for. And so that's also something that I've really appreciated, and I've seen other commissioners do the same, that we are kind of a conduit between community and this land use zoning ecosystem. Yes. I was just soft shoeing until you said something.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for giving me some time. I think I've started, because we know what the initiatives or the agenda items are going to be in advance. You get the materials. I've used those as an opportunity to talk to people, that I work with, or people at home, or friends. And, I work for a construction company, so we work with tradespeople and developers and architects and engineers and all kinds of different people through the course of our work. And each of them has a different perspective. And I think that, although it's not public testimony, I think that, in having conversations with people and kind of getting their sense on different initiatives that we look at, in conversations, people will really tell you what they think, as opposed to being here and, being on YouTube, is just a little bit different. So I if there's an item that comes up that maybe I don't have an opinion on, but I try and seek people out that may have an opinion on it and have a conversation with them, which has been super helpful, and you get very unique perspectives. So that's helped me.
Other parting thoughts? Questions? Thank you.
And I've been wondering about this because we came in as a group, on the cusp of city government changing its structure, and now that has changed. And I'm just curious, you in the hot seat and staff, have things changed? Will things change as a result of that? Is communication different? How does the Planning Commission carry its agenda forward under that new form? Or is it just the same thing? I kind of think we're exiting out just at a time when everything's ramping up, thank God. So I'm curious if that has been an open discussion about how to navigate the future under the new form of government.
Can I piggyback on that?
Absolutely piggyback.
Because I think that's critical. I think, at least in my case, my pathway here was as a result of one, sitting commissioner saying, I'd like to have you consider this. And quite frankly, I had to look at the composition of, council, and somebody might have asked me that, and I'd have said no. But the person who asked me, I said yes. But it was clear that ask was coming from somebody who was deeply focused on this work and the transition and the separation of the two commissions and sort of creating a path going forward. And to your point, I'm wondering if that has also been embraced or evidenced within, and again, I'm not asking you to sort of say yes or no, but that handoff is not something that happens automatically. Those beliefs, that focus, existed within the body of five, and it was clear that people were identified based on what our sponsors believed we could bring to this body. And I'm wondering if folks are still learning what it is we bring, or they have a sense of what they expect from us. I don't know. It may be a fair question, it may not, but it's been asked.
Well, Patricia, I'll have you reflect on that. I think it's a good question. I mean, we're, 6 months into the new administration. There's been a big learning curve, I'm sure, for all of those community members who have also volunteered and been elected into those positions. We haven't taken a legislative project to the commission yet. That is a planning commission recommendation. So the first one will be the code alignment project that you just made a recommendation on, and that includes, as you know, amendments to various city titles. So that'll be our first one. One of the biggest changes administratively is that the council has decided to form committees, and that our recommendations will go first to a committee for a public hearing, and then that committee will make its recommendation to the full city council. So we still are working through, what does that look like? So in one way, it looks like more community engagement, because the public can have 3 places to testify now. They come to the Planning Commission to testify, they can testify at the committee, then they can testify at the full council. We haven't had a conversation with them about whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. I think like most things in our world and in our work, there's pros and cons, right, to that. But that's certainly what we're expecting to happen with that first project, and that's where we're starting to have the conversations with them about how this unfolds from a procedural standpoint. Patricia, do you want to reflect on that?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, everyone. So I guess I agree with everything that Sandra just said. I would add that from the perspective of the legal authority of the Planning Commission, nothing has changed, right? The Planning Commission's authorities are outlined in the code and in state law, and those powers and duties remain the same. And those recommendations are they are similarly recommendations to council, and then council is the final decision maker in most of the work that the planning commission does. And so I think what is different is the way it advances through the process to the city council, as Sandra reflected, the fact that we have the council committees. That's very new part of our system. And I think those procedures and, you know, when things go to how things move from council committee to full council is still something that I think is being, you know, fleshed out. So, and Commissioner Alexander, and I think also Commissioner Lang, you alluded to this, wanted to just reflect on the appointments themselves. I do know, you know, we have this planning commission, you know, we have the vacant positions, and the appointees, the nominated appointees will be going to council committee and council shortly. As you know, we have seen other appointments for other commissions and bodies go to the city council, and the city council, you know, the mayor does make the appointments, and council confirms those appointments. But I can definitely say that what we've observed is that the council is very interested in the appointees and those appointments, and I think they really understand the importance of the appointments to these various bodies and commissions. So I don't know if that completely answers your question, but I think, you know, things are still very much works in progress, I would say.
Great question. Sorry. Chair Rouse for the record. Other thoughts?
Last thought. I sound like a Baptist preacher. This is the last thing that I'm going to say for the third time. One of the things that I've appreciated about the work of this body is that at times we have had to struggle with what I call parallel truths. It's not yes or no. It's, let me answer today's question today, but I can't answer next month's question today because it's not being asked today. But I need to keep in mind, to your point, Commissioner Lang, that the impacts, the concentric circles of impact go out over time. And we need to think about, what does it mean today? What does it mean tomorrow? But I felt that this body has navigated through those discussions and decisions very tactfully and very wisely. You know, even for us to say there are codes that we want to revisit in 5 years, but the point of relief needs to be now. I mean, it's wise, and it allows us to not get into a binary that it's either yes or no. I think we have wisely, without stating so vociferously, rejected the premise that it has to be that. And I found that to be refreshing and, quite frankly, needed in a lot of other rooms.
Sandra, you, on the presentation, there was like how many hours of time we put in and hearings and all of that. You didn't put on there how many times we unanimously voted something out. And as I think back over the last couple years, very seldom did we have splits. I think the depth of the conversation and the understanding of things kind of took care of that to a large degree. And the respect, I think, that we all had for one another and their opinions really helped keep this group kind of aligned and moving in the same direction with our votes and stuff. And I don't know, you know, I don't follow the planning commission as a hobby, so I don't know if that's something that is typical, or has it been more contentious over the years with votes that are very difficult to get out of here. But I had thought about that often, that we've pretty much been unanimous in our agreements with what we need to do. So that's been nice to be part of.
If I may, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because normally when I see like unanimous after unanimous, I'm like, did we go far enough? Like, did we actually, like, that can actually sometimes be a source of worry for me, that like, did we engage sufficiently enough? Did we go far enough? Did we have the depth of conversation with the number of people that we need to? Because my assumption is when a project comes here, it's not an easy question, because the low-hanging fruit has long since been plucked. And what I have really appreciated about this body and all of you is that we struggle together and we learn together. And when it has not been unanimous, that we respect each other's stances. Like I remember, I think like the housing regulatory relief, that was really hard. And I remember like a few of us said no. And there was a conversation about like, should we have a minority report, which I think actually is something for transmittal letters would be a good norm to bring forward, especially as we're moving to a new form of government, to be able to characterize, you know, the depth of struggle that we have engaged with. And yeah, and I think that also people have had a question around like vote count in terms of what that means message wise, like if it's a 5-4, if it's a 7-2, and to vote sort of almost like a this is the message we as a body want to send, and that's also been a really interesting and juicy conversation to me. I think another, going back to the council, you know, and have this new form of government, we're still in early days in terms of what, like how many committees there are, and what that process looks like. I mean, our first real debut as a commission is with our new commissioners who will be appointed. So thank you for being the advanced guard team. One thing I have observed is that the unique value proposition that we have in this space is the capacity of time and of focus, and that the capacity of time to engage community members, however many people choose to testify, that we will have time for them. And that is not always available, at least historically in the last 6 months, at full council or at committee, because there's a lot happening right now. And so to allow that breadth and that time, I hope, and I'm looking forward to finding new ways to translate into a welcoming environment where people feel called and abundantly invited to be part of this conversation at a deeper level. So. Kind of just don't want to let anyone go. Except I know that we get to hang out after this, thanks to staff for arranging a post hearing hangout. Anything else? I keep asking, anything else? Is there anything else? Okay. In alphabetical order, Commissioners Alexander, Lang, and Pouncil, and Abstentia, I'm so grateful, and as I hope you feel held and deeply appreciated, and with the recognition that Oregon really is only 5 people big and Salem is not far enough to go. Thank you, more than words can say, for your service, for your generosity of friendship, and for your work in support of this city that we all deeply love. So thank you. And with that, let us adjourn and carouse. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Take care. Have fun.
Bye,
Sorry I can't
Patricia.
join you this evening. Bye-bye. Take care.
We'll have a cardboard cutout of you.
Enjoy.
Thank you. Bye-bye.